Blue light screamed through the frozen Missouri night, strobing red and white across black ice and empty highway. A woman in scrubs is yanked from her Honda, spun around, slammed chest first against the hood. Her wrists are wrenched behind her back. Metal bites into skin. She doesn't resist. She doesn't scream. She just says, quietly, like she's done this before, "I'm a trauma nurse. Someone is dying. You need to let me go." The officer doesn't listen. He never does. What he doesn't know, what none of them know, is that the pale, exhausted woman he just cuffed used to work under mortar fire in Kandahar. And 6 miles away, a patient is flatlining on a table because the only person in 3 counties who can save her is standing here, in handcuffs, on the side of a highway, while the clock runs out. If you want to see how far a single mistake can spiral, how power, arrogance, and a badge can collide with someone who refuses to break, stay until the end. Like this video, drop a comment with your city. Let me know how far this story travels. Claire Whitaker had been awake for 19 hours when the call came in. She was in her car, halfway between her apartment in Creston and Mercy Ridge Regional Hospital, trying to shake off the kind of exhaustion that made your vision blur at stoplights. Her shift had ended at 6. It was now close to 11. She'd gone home, showered, microwaved something she didn't taste, and collapsed onto her couch with her shoes still on. She'd just started to drift when her phone buzzed. "Whitaker. Claire, it's Jenna. We need you back." Jenna Park was the night charge nurse. Efficient, no nonsense, not the type to call unless it was serious. "What's going on?" "MVA, 2-car pileup on Route 14, 1 critical, head trauma, internal bleeding, vitals tanking. They're bringing her in now and we're short-staffed. You're the only one certified for the procedure." Claire sat up, rubbing her eyes. "What about Morris?" "Morris is in Kansas City at a conference. You're it." She didn't hesitate. "I'm 20 minutes out." "Make it 15. Claire grabbed her coat, her keys, her hospital badge, still clipped to her scrubs from earlier. She didn't bother changing. She just moved. The roads were empty. The kind of empty that happens in small Midwest towns after 9 p.m., when even the gas stations start looking like abandoned movie sets. She pushed the Honda to 70, then 75. The highway was straight and flat, cutting through fields of frozen corn stubble. No traffic, no lights, just her headlights and the hum of the engine. She'd done this drive 1,000 times, Creston to Mercy Ridge. Mercy Ridge to Creston, a 40-minute loop that had become the shape of her life. She didn't mind it. She liked the quiet, liked the work, liked being useful. She didn't think about the war much anymore. Didn't need to. It was behind her. She'd done her time, served her country, come home in one piece. That was more than a lot of people could say. Now she worked the ER, patched up car wrecks and heart attacks and the occasional bar fight, and that was enough. It had to be. Her phone rang again. Jenna. "Claire, where are you?" 10 minutes. "She's crashing. If you're not here in 5, I'm coming." She pressed the gas pedal down. The speedometer crept past 80. That's when she saw the lights, red and blue, flashing in her rearview mirror, bright enough to turn the inside of her car into a kaleidoscope. Her stomach dropped. "No, no, no, no!" She checked her speed. 82. She glanced at the road, straight, clear, no other cars. She wasn't weaving, wasn't reckless, just fast. She slowed down, pulled onto the shoulder, and rolled down her window. Cold air slapped her face. Her breath misted in front of her. The patrol car stopped behind her. A single officer stepped out, flashlight in hand. He took his time, adjusted his belt, checked his radio, like he had all night. Claire leaned out the window. "Officer, I'm a nurse. I'm on my way to an emergency. Someone is dying. License and registration." His voice was flat, bored even. "Sir, I'm not trying to get out of a ticket. I'm telling you, there's a patient at Mercy Ridge Regional who needs me right now. If I don't get there in the next few minutes..." License, registration. She bit down on her frustration and reached for her wallet. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from the clock ticking in her head. Every second she sat here was a second someone else didn't have. She handed him her license. He took it, studied it under his flashlight, then looked at her. "You got any idea how fast you were going?" 82. "Speed limit 65. I know, I'm sorry, but I'm a trauma nurse and I'm needed at the hospital. This is a legitimate emergency. He shone the flashlight in her face. She squinted but didn't look away. You been drinking tonight? No. You sure about that? I've been working a double shift. I'm exhausted, but I'm sober. He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes. Step out of the car. What? Step out of the car. Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. Officer, I'm telling you, someone is dying. I'm the only person in 3 counties who can perform the procedure she needs. If I don't get there, step out of the car. She didn't move. Not because she was resisting, because she couldn't believe this was happening. Her phone rang. She glanced down. Jenna. Don't touch that, the officer said. It's the hospital. I said don't touch it. The ringing stopped. A second later, it started again. Ma'am, this is your last warning. Claire opened the door and stepped out. The cold hit her like a fist. She wasn't wearing a coat, just scrubs and a thin fleece jacket. Her breath came out in clouds. The officer circled her car, shining his light inside. You carrying any weapons? Drugs? Anything I should know about? No, just my medical bag. Open the trunk. This is insane. Open it. She popped the trunk. He rummaged through it, found nothing. Of course he found nothing. Her phone rang again. Officer, please, just call the hospital. They'll confirm everything I'm telling you. He ignored her, pulled out a breathalyzer. Blow into this. I'm not drunk. Then you won't mind proving it. She took the breathalyzer and blew. It beeped. He checked the reading, 0. He frowned, like he was disappointed. All right, hands behind your back. Claire froze. What? You're under arrest. For what? Reckless endangerment. Failure to comply. Resisting an officer. I didn't resist anything. You argued. You delayed. That's resistance. This is a mistake. He grabbed her wrist and twisted it behind her back. She gasped. Not from pain, she'd felt worse, but from the sheer absurdity of it. He slapped the cuff on, then pulled her other arm back. The second cuff clicked. Her phone was still ringing. That's the hospital, she said. Her voice was steady, calm. The same voice she used in the ER when a patient was coding and everyone else was panicking. If you don't let me answer that, someone is going to die. Not my problem. He walked her to the patrol car and pushed her into the back seat. The door slammed. The lock clicked. She sat there, hands cuffed behind her, staring at the cage between her and the front seat. Her phone was still ringing. She could hear it, muffled, from inside her car. Then it stopped. The officer got into the driver's seat and picked up his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I've got a 1015 on Route 14, mile marker 47. Female, Caucasian, mid-30s, refusing to comply. Bringing her in. Copy that, Unit 12. Claire leaned forward. Please, just call Mercy Ridge. Ask for Jenna Park. She'll tell you, ma'am, you need to calm down. I am calm. But someone is going to die because you won't listen. He didn't answer, just put the car in gear and pulled back onto the highway. They drove in silence. Claire's mind was racing. She thought about the patient, thought about Jenna, thought about what would happen if she didn't get there in time. She'd been in worse situations. She'd worked in field hospitals where the power cut out and you had to operate by flashlight. She'd been in convoys that got hit by IEDs and had to triage soldiers in the dirt while rounds cracked overhead. She'd learned how to stay calm when everything around her was falling apart. But this was different. This wasn't chaos. This was bureaucracy. And bureaucracy didn't care how fast you moved or how loud you screamed. The patrol car pulled into the station, a squat brick building with a flag out front and 2 cruisers parked in the lot. The officer got out, opened her door, and hauled her to her feet. Watch your head. He walked her inside. The station was quiet. A dispatcher sat behind a desk, scrolling through her phone. A deputy leaned against the coffee machine, half asleep. Neither of them looked up. Got a live one, the officer said. The dispatcher glanced at Claire. What'd she do? Speeding, 82 and a 65, gave me attitude. Claire took a breath. I'm a trauma nurse. I was on my way to an emergency. You can call Mercy Ridge and confirm. Sure you were, the officer said. The dispatcher smirked. Claire felt something crack inside her. Not anger, not fear, just exhaustion. The kind that settles into your bones and makes you wonder why you even bother. I need to make a phone call. You'll get your call. When? When I say so. He led her to a holding cell, a small, windowless room with a bench and a toilet. He unlocked the cuffs, pushed her inside, and slammed the door. Sit tight. Someone will process you in the morning. The morning? That's right. I don't have until morning. That patient doesn't have until morning. He walked away. Claire stood there for a moment, staring at the door. Then she sat down on the bench and put her head in her hands. She thought about the patient, thought about the procedure, thought about Jenna trying to keep someone alive with one hand while calling for help with the other. She thought about the soldiers she'd lost, the ones who didn't make it because the medevac took too long or the bleeding wouldn't stop or the equipment failed. She thought about the ones she'd saved, the ones who shouldn't have made it but did because she refused to give up. She thought about all of it. And then she heard voices outside the cell, telling you something's wrong. I saw her badge. She's legit. So what? She was speeding. She said someone was dying. They all say that. No, I mean, look at her gear. That's not regular nurse stuff. That's trauma equipment, military grade. How would you know? My brother's a medic. I've seen it before. There was a pause. You really think... I think we should call the hospital, just to be sure. Another pause, longer this time. Fine. But if this turns out to be nothing, it won't. Claire stood up and walked to the door. She couldn't see through it, but she could hear everything. A phone rang. Someone answered. Mercy Ridge Regional, this is Jenna Park. Hi, this is Deputy Lydia Moss with the Creston County Sheriff's Office. We have a woman here who says she's a nurse, Claire Whitaker. She claims she was on her way to an emergency. Can you confirm? There was a beat of silence. Then Jenna's voice, sharp and cold. You arrested her? Yes, ma'am. She was speeding. Do you have any idea what you just did? Ma'am, I'm just trying to verify. Claire Whitaker is the only trauma specialist within 3 counties. She's the only person who can perform the procedure we need right now. We have a patient coding on the table, and you just arrested the one person who can save her. Another silence. Where is she? She's here. At the station. Get her out. Now. Ma'am, I don't have the authority. Then find someone who does. Because if this patient dies, it's on you. The line went dead. Claire heard footsteps. Fast. The door swung open. Deputy Moss stood there, a young woman, maybe late 20s, with wide eyes and a radio in her hand. You need to come with me. Claire stepped out. What's happening? The hospital confirmed everything. We're getting you out of here. What about the officer who arrested me? He's not here right now. Where is he? I don't know, but we need to move. They walked through the station. The dispatcher was on the phone, her face pale. The other deputy was gone. Outside, a black SUV was pulling into the lot. It stopped in front of the station and a man stepped out. Mid-50s, military posture, dress uniform. Stars on his shoulders. Brigadier General Marcus Hale. He looked at Claire, then at Deputy Moss. Is this her? Yes, sir. He turned to Claire. You're the trauma nurse? Yes. The patient at Mercy Ridge. Do you know who she is? No? She's my wife. Claire felt the air leave her lungs. Hale's expression didn't change. Get in the car. She did. The SUV tore out of the lot, sirens wailing, lights flashing. Hale was on the phone, barking orders. Claire sat in the back, her hands still shaking, her mind trying to catch up. How long ago did she crash? Claire asked. 45 minutes. What's her status? Critical, head trauma, internal bleeding. They've been trying to stabilize her, but she's not responding. What procedure are they trying? I don't know the medical terms. They said only you could do it. Claire nodded. She knew what they meant. The SUV screamed through the night, faster than Claire had been going. No one stopped them. No one even tried. They pulled into the hospital lot. Hale was out of the car before it fully stopped. Claire followed, sprinting through the automatic doors and into the ER. Jenna was waiting. Trauma 2, now! Claire didn't stop to explain, didn't stop to breathe. She just moved. The trauma room was chaos. Monitors beeping, IV lines tangled, 2 nurses trying to manage a patient who was barely holding on. Claire scrubbed in, gloved up, and stepped to the table. The woman on the table was in her early 50s, pale, unconscious, blood pressure dropping. "Talk to me," Claire said. "Subdural hematoma. We tried to manage it conservatively, but she's herniating. We need to relieve the pressure. Prep for a burr hole. We don't have a neurosurgeon." "I know, I've done this before." The nurses hesitated. "Trust me," Claire said. They did. She worked fast. Her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't waver. She'd done this in worse conditions, in tents, in the back of trucks, under fire. This was clean, controlled. She could do this. Drill, incision, pressure release. The monitor stabilized. The room exhaled. Claire stepped back, pulled off her gloves, and looked at Jenna. "She's stable, but she needs a neurosurgeon. Get her to a level 1 trauma center. Now." Jenna nodded and grabbed the phone. Claire walked out of the trauma room and into the hallway. Hale was standing there, arms crossed, jaw tight. "She's going to make it," Claire said. Hale didn't say anything. He just nodded. Claire leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Behind her, the automatic doors opened. Footsteps. Voices. She opened her eyes. The officer who arrested her was standing in the hallway. 2 uniformed MPs flanked him. His face was red. His hands were cuffed. Hale stepped forward. "You have any idea what you just did?" The officer opened his mouth, closed it. "You arrested the one person who could save my wife's life. You ignored her credentials. You ignored the emergency. You let your ego get in the way of someone doing their job." "Sir, I was just following protocol." "Protocol?" Hale's voice was quiet, dangerous. "You think protocol covers ignoring a dying woman?" The officer didn't answer. "You're done," Hale said. "Internal Affairs is already reviewing your record. And from what I hear, this isn't the first time you've pulled something like this." The MPs led him away. Claire watched them go. She felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not anger, just tired. Hale turned to her. "Thank you." She nodded. "I mean it. If you hadn't been there, I was just doing my job. Not everyone would have kept it together after what you went through tonight." Claire shrugged. "I've had worse nights." Hale studied her for a moment. Then he held out his hand. She shook it. "If there's anything I can do, just make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." He nodded. "It won't." Claire turned and walked toward the exit. Her shift was over, again. She just wanted to go home. But as she stepped outside, she saw the patrol car still parked in the ambulance bay. The door was open. The radio was crackling. "All units be advised. Officer involved in unlawful detention." "Repeat, officer involved in unlawful detention. Full investigation underway." Claire stopped. She thought about the deputy, the one who spoke up, the one who made the call. She thought about the officer, the one who didn't listen. She thought about the system that let it happen. And then she thought about the woman on the table, the one who didn't have a voice, the one who needed someone to fight for her. Claire got into her car and drove home. But something had shifted. She could feel it. This wasn't over. Claire woke up the next morning to 73 missed calls. She'd silenced her phone before collapsing into bed, too exhausted to care who needed what. Now, sitting at her kitchen table with cold coffee and a headache that felt like a drill behind her eyes, she scrolled through the notifications. Most were from numbers she didn't recognize. A few were from Jenna. 2 were from General Hale's office. 1 was from a reporter at the Creston County Gazette. She deleted them all and stood up. Her body ached. Not from the work, she was used to that, but from the tension of the night before. Her shoulders were tight, her jaw hurt from clenching. She felt like she'd been in a fight. She showered, dressed, and made it halfway to the hospital before her phone rang again. This time, she answered. "Whitaker. Ms. Whitaker, this is Lieutenant Colonel Angela Frazier with the Judge Advocate General's office. I'm calling regarding the incident that occurred last night on Route 14. Claire pulled over. "What about it?" "We're conducting a formal investigation into Officer Raymond Locke's conduct. We'd like you to come in and provide a statement." "I already told the deputy everything." "I understand, but this is a legal matter now. Officer Locke has been placed on administrative leave pending review. Your testimony will be critical to the case." Claire rubbed her eyes. "When?" "Today, if possible. We're working on an expedited timeline." Why expedited? Fraser hesitated. Because this isn't the first complaint we've received about Officer Locke, and given the nature of last night's incident, we need to act quickly. Claire felt something cold settle in her chest. How many complaints? I can't disclose that information at this time, but I can tell you that your case may be the one that finally holds him accountable. Claire sat there for a moment, staring at the dashboard. She didn't want to be part of this. She didn't want to testify. She didn't want to relive what happened. She just wanted to go to work, do her job, and move on. But then she thought about the woman on the table, Hale's wife, the one who almost died because a cop with a badge decided his authority mattered more than her life. Fine. Where do I need to be? Fraser gave her an address, an office building in Jefferson City, 2 hours away. Claire wrote it down, hung up, and pulled back onto the road. She didn't go to the hospital. She called Jenna and told her she'd be out for the day. Jenna didn't ask questions. She just said, "Take care of yourself," and hung up. Claire drove north through flat farmland and small towns that looked like they hadn't changed in 50 years. She passed billboards for insurance companies and fast food chains and churches with sayings on their marquees that were supposed to be inspirational but just felt tired. She kept the radio off. She didn't want noise. She just wanted to think. By the time she reached Jefferson City, it was almost noon. The office building was downtown, tucked between a bank and a deli. She parked on the street, fed the meter, and walked inside. The lobby was cold and institutional. White walls, gray carpet, a receptionist behind a desk who barely looked up when Claire gave her name. Third floor, room 312. Claire took the elevator up. The hallway was narrow and fluorescent lit, lined with identical doors and nameplates that meant nothing to her. She found 312 and knocked. "Come in." Lieutenant Colonel Fraser was younger than Claire expected, maybe early 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She stood when Claire entered and extended a hand. "Miss Whitaker, thank you for coming." "Just doing what I was told." Fraser gestured to a chair. "Please sit." Claire sat. Fraser pulled out a recorder and set it on the table between them. "I'm going to record this conversation. Is that all right?" "Do I have a choice?" "You do, but it'll make things easier if we have it on record." Claire nodded. "Fine." Fraser pressed a button. A red light blinked on. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Angela Fraser, conducting an interview with Ms. Claire Whitaker regarding the incident that occurred on April 19th at approximately 10:47 p.m. on Route 14 in Creston County, Missouri. Ms. Whitaker, can you state your full name and occupation for the record?" "Claire Elizabeth Whitaker, registered nurse, trauma specialist at Mercy Ridge Regional Hospital." "And can you describe what happened last night?" Claire took a breath and started from the beginning. The call from Jenna, the drive, the lights in her rearview mirror, the officer who wouldn't listen, the cuffs, the cell, the moment she thought someone was going to die because she couldn't do her job. Fraser didn't interrupt. She just listened, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When Claire finished, Fraser leaned back in her chair. "You mentioned that Officer Locke ignored your credentials. Can you elaborate on that?" "I showed him my hospital badge, my driver's license. I told him I was a trauma nurse responding to an emergency. He didn't care." "Did he check your credentials at all?" "He glanced at my license. That's it." "And when you mentioned the emergency, what was his response?" "He said he didn't care who I claimed to be." Fraser wrote something down. "Did he make any calls to verify your story?" "No." "Did he allow you to make a call?" "No. He said I'd get my call in the morning." "Did he explain why you were being arrested?" "Reckless endangerment, failure to comply, resisting an officer." "Did you resist?" "No, I argued, but I didn't resist." Fraser nodded slowly. "Ms. Whitaker, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." Claire met her eyes. "Go ahead." "Do you believe Officer Locke acted the way he did because of your gender?" Claire blinked. She hadn't expected that question. "I don't know. But it's possible?" "Anything's possible. Do you think he would have treated a male nurse the same way?" Claire thought about it. She thought about the way Locke had looked at her, the way he'd dismissed her, the way he'd talked down to her like she was a child. "I don't know," she said again. "But I know he didn't treat me like a professional. He treated me like I was lying." Fraser wrote that down. "Thank you, that's helpful." She asked a few more questions. Technical details, timelines, specifics about the arrest. Then she turned off the recorder. Off the record, Fraser said, you should know that Officer Locke has a history. Complaints? Lawsuits? Most of them settled quietly. But there's a pattern. What kind of pattern? Abuse of authority, targeting women specifically, nurses, teachers, social workers, people in helping professions. He seems to have a problem with women who don't defer to him. Claire felt her jaw tighten. So why is he still wearing a badge? Because no one's been able to make a case stick. Until now. What's different about now? You're credible, you're documented, and you have a witness, General Hale. That carries weight. Leaned back in her chair. So I'm the test case. You're the one who can finally stop him. Claire didn't say anything. She just sat there, processing. Fraser stood. I'll be in touch. We'll likely need you to testify if this goes to trial. If? When, but I have to say if for legal reasons. Claire stood and shook her hand. Anything else? Just one thing. Be prepared. Locke's not going to go quietly. He'll fight this, and when he does, it's going to get ugly. Claire walked out of the building and into the bright afternoon sun. She felt drained, not physically tired, just emptied out, like someone had pulled a plug and let everything drain away. She got in her car and sat there for a moment, staring at the steering wheel. Then she pulled out her phone and scrolled through the missed calls again. One number kept showing up, a local area code. She didn't recognize it. She called it back. Preston County Gazette, this is Martin Reed. This is Claire Whitaker. You called me. Ms. Whitaker, thank you for calling back. I'm a reporter with the Gazette, and I'm working on a story about what happened last night. I was hoping I could ask you a few questions. I'm not interested. I understand, but I think people need to hear your side of the story. Why? Because it's already out there. Officer Locke gave a statement this morning. He's claiming you were reckless, belligerent, and uncooperative. He's painting himself as the victim. Claire felt her blood pressure spike. That's not what happened. I know, that's why I want to talk to you. She hesitated. She didn't like reporters, didn't trust them. But if Locke was already spinning the narrative, maybe she didn't have a choice. Fine, but not over the phone and not today. When? I'll let you know. She hung up before he could respond. The drive back to Creston felt longer than it should have. Claire's mind kept replaying the conversation with Fraser. The pattern. The complaints. The women who'd been dismissed, humiliated, and silenced. She thought about how close she'd come to being just another name on a list. Another woman who was ignored. Another case that got buried. By the time she pulled into her apartment complex, it was almost dark. She grabbed her bag, locked the car, and headed inside. She was halfway up the stairs when she saw someone standing by her door, Deputy Lydia Moss. Claire stopped. What are you doing here? I needed to talk to you. About what? Moss looked around like she was checking to see if anyone was listening. Can we go inside? Claire unlocked the door and let her in. Moss followed, closing the door behind her. What's going on? Claire asked. Moss took a breath. I wanted to apologize. For what? For not speaking up sooner. I knew something was wrong. I saw your gear. I heard what you were saying, but I didn't do anything until it was almost too late. Claire crossed her arms. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't want you to think we're all like him. I don't. Good, because Locke, he's not one of us. He's a problem. And we've known it for a long time. Claire frowned. Then why didn't anyone do anything? Moss looked down. Because he's protected. He has friends, people who cover for him. And if you go against him, you pay for it. How? Bad shifts, dead-end assignments, harassment. He makes your life hell. So everyone just lets him do whatever he wants? Not everyone, but enough. Claire sat down on the couch. Why are you telling me this? Because if you're going to testify against him, you need to know what you're walking into. He's going to come after you, and he's not going to play fair. I can handle myself. I know, but you shouldn't have to. Claire looked at her. Moss was young, probably younger than Claire had been when she joined the army, but there was something in her eyes, something that reminded Claire of herself. A determination, a refusal to let things stay broken. What do you want me to do? Claire asked. Just be careful. Watch your back. And if anything happens, anything, call me. She handed Claire a card with her cell number written on it. Claire took it. Thanks. Moss nodded and stood. I should go. Hey. Moss turned. Thank you for making that call. Moss gave a small, tired smile. I should have made it sooner. She left. Claire locked the door behind her and sat back down on the couch. She didn't sleep that night. She tried. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw the lights, the cuffs, the cell, the woman on the table. At some point, she gave up and made coffee. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the card Moss had given her, thinking about patterns and systems and the ways people got crushed when they tried to fight back. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Stop talking or you'll regret it. Claire stared at the screen. Then she deleted the message and turned off her phone. The next morning, she went to work like nothing had happened. Jenna took one look at her and said, "You look like hell." Thanks. Seriously, are you okay? I'm fine. Liar. Claire didn't argue. She just grabbed a chart and got to work. The shift was busy. A diabetic crisis. A kid with a broken arm. An elderly man with chest pain. Standard ER chaos. Claire moved through it on autopilot, her hands working while her brain stayed somewhere else. Around noon, Jenna pulled her aside. There's a guy out front asking for you. Who? Says he's a reporter. Claire closed her eyes. Tell him I'm not available. I did. He says he'll wait. Fine, let him wait. But at the end of her shift, when she walked out to the parking lot, Martin Reed was leaning against her car. Ms. Whitaker, I told you I'd call you. I know, but this couldn't wait. Why not? He held up his phone. Because this just went live. Claire took the phone and looked at the screen. It was a news article. Local station. The headline read, Nurse arrested for reckless driving claims, police misconduct. She scanned the article. It quoted Locke. It quoted his lawyer. It mentioned Claire by name but didn't include her side of the story. It made her sound hysterical, irrational, like she was making excuses. Claire handed the phone back. Great. That's not all. Locke's attorney filed a defamation suit this morning against you and against General Hale. Claire felt the ground shift under her. What? He's claiming emotional distress, loss of reputation. He's asking for damages. That's insane. That's strategy. He's trying to intimidate you, make you back down. Claire looked at Reed. What do you want from me? I want to tell the truth. Your truth. Not his version. She thought about it. Thought about the text message, the lawsuit, the way Locke was already twisting the narrative. Fine, but not here. Where? Somewhere quiet. They met at a diner on the edge of town, a place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since morning. Reed ordered pie. Claire ordered nothing. He pulled out a recorder. Do you mind? Go ahead. He pressed record. Claire told him everything, the call, the arrest, the cell. The moment she thought she was going to fail. The woman who almost died. The officer who didn't care. Reed listened. He didn't interrupt. He just let her talk. When she finished, he turned off the recorder. This is going to blow up, he said. I don't care. You should. Because once this story runs, everyone's going to have an opinion, and not all of them are going to be on your side. I'm not looking for opinions. I'm looking for the truth. Reed nodded slowly. All right. I'll run it tomorrow. Good. She left the diner and drove home. She didn't turn on the radio, didn't check her phone, she just drove. When she got home, there was an envelope taped to her door. No stamp, no return address. Just her name, handwritten in block letters. She opened it. Inside was a single photograph. It showed her car parked outside her apartment. Taken recently. Maybe today. On the back in the same block letters, last warning. Claire stared at the photo for a long moment. Then she folded it, tucked it into her pocket, and went inside. She locked the door, drew the curtains, sat down on the couch, and pulled out her phone. She called Moss. It's Claire. We need to talk. Moss arrived 20 minutes later, out of uniform, driving an unmarked sedan. She didn't knock. Claire opened the door before she could, pulled her inside, and locked it behind her. Show me, Moss said. Claire handed her the photograph. Moss studied it, her jaw tightening. When did you get this? An hour ago, taped to my door. Anyone see who left it? I don't know. I didn't ask. Moss flipped the photo over, read the message, and pulled out her phone. I'm calling this in. To who? Your department? The same people who've been covering for Locke? Moss hesitated. Not everyone's dirty. Enough are. Moss looked at her. So what do you want to do? Claire sat down on the arm of the couch. I want to know who took this. I want to know if Locke sent it, and I want to know how far he's willing to go. He's already filed a lawsuit. He's already threatening you. How much further do you think he'll go? As far as he needs to. Moss put the photo down on the table. All right, I'll run the photo. See if we can pull prints. Check security cameras in the area, but you need to be smart about this. Don't go anywhere alone. I'm not hiding. I'm not asking you to hide. I'm asking you to be careful. Claire stood. I've been careful my whole life. It didn't stop this from happening. Moss didn't have an answer for that. She left a few minutes later, taking the photo with her. Claire locked the door, checked the windows, and sat back down. Her mind was running scenarios. Who took the picture? Who delivered it? Who knew where she lived? Locke knew. He'd processed her arrest. He had her address on file. But would he be stupid enough to do this himself? No, he'd have someone else do it. Someone loyal. Someone who owed him. Claire pulled out her phone and opened the browser. She typed in Raymond Locke, Creston County, and started scrolling. The first few results were standard, department profiles, local news mentions, commendations. Nothing unusual. Then she found an older article from 5 years back, a lawsuit. A woman named Teresa Vaughn claimed Locke had assaulted her during a traffic stop. The case was settled out of court. No details. No admission of guilt. Just a payout and a non-disclosure agreement. Claire kept digging. Another case. 3 years ago. A schoolteacher named Angela Ruiz, same story. Traffic stop, harassment, lawsuit, settlement. Then another, and another. 5 cases in 10 years. All women. All settled quietly. All buried under NDAs and legal red tape. Claire felt her stomach turn. Fraser had said there was a pattern. She hadn't said how deep it went. She screenshotted the articles and sent them to Moss. Then she sent them to Martin Reed. Then she closed her laptop and sat in the dark, thinking. The story ran the next morning. Claire woke to her phone vibrating off the nightstand. She grabbed it and saw the headline on the Creston County Gazette's homepage. Trauma nurse arrested en route to emergency. Patient nearly dies. She read the article. Reed had done exactly what he'd promised. He'd told her side. He'd quoted her directly. He'd included the timeline, the ignored credentials, the desperate calls from the hospital. He'd even mentioned the previous lawsuits. The comment section was already filling up. Most people were supportive. Some weren't. She was speeding. She broke the law. End of story. Of course she's playing the victim. Typical. If she was really a nurse, she should have called ahead instead of breaking traffic laws. Claire closed the app and got dressed. She didn't have time for internet arguments. She had work. When she arrived at the hospital, Jenna was waiting. You're famous. I'm really not. The article's everywhere. Local news picked it up. State news is running it. Someone sent it to a national outlet. Claire stopped. What? You're going viral, Claire. That's not what I wanted. Maybe not, but it's what you got. Claire walked into the break room and poured coffee. Her hands were steady, but her mind was racing. She hadn't expected this. She'd thought the story would run locally, make a small splash and fade. She hadn't expected it to spread. Her phone buzzed, a text from Fraser. We need to talk. Call me. Claire stepped outside and dialed. Whitaker. Miss Whitaker, I assume you've seen the article. I have. Good. Because it just accelerated our timeline. We're moving the hearing up, 2 days from now. What hearing? The disciplinary hearing for Officer Locke. It was supposed to be next month, but given the media attention, we're expediting. Why? Because if we don't, it looks like we're dragging our feet, and right now the public's watching. Claire leaned against the wall. What do you need from me? Your testimony. In person. We'll need you to walk through everything again, on the record, in front of a panel. Who's on the panel? 3 internal affairs officers, 1 civilian oversight rep, and a legal advisor. Will Locke be there? Yes. Along with his attorney. Claire felt her pulse kick up. Fine. When and where? Fraser gave her the details. Claire wrote them down and hung up. She went back inside, finished her shift, and tried not to think about what was coming. But it was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Locke's face. Every time she checked her phone, there was another message. Some supportive, some hostile, some threatening. One message stood out. "You don't know what you're doing. Stop before it's too late." No name, no number, just a warning. Claire deleted it and kept moving. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through what she'd say at the hearing. She'd done this before, testified, given statements, sat in front of panels and answered questions. The Army had trained her for that. But this felt different. This wasn't about procedure. This was personal. At some point, she gave up on sleep and got up. She made coffee, sat at her kitchen table, and pulled out a notebook. She started writing. Not a speech, just notes, facts, timeline, details she didn't want to forget. Her phone rang. It was 2:47 a.m. She answered. "Whitaker." Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice. Male, low, calm. "You should have stayed quiet." Claire's grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is you're making a mistake." "Am I?" "Locke's not the problem. You are. You're making this bigger than it needs to be." "Someone almost died because of him." "Someone always almost dies. That's not the point." "Then what is?" "The point is you're rocking the boat. And when you rock the boat, people fall out." "Good. Maybe the right people will drown." The voice laughed, not a friendly sound. "You really think you're going to win this?" "I don't know, but I'm not backing down." "Then you're dumber than I thought." The line went dead. Claire set the phone down and stared at it. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She'd heard worse threats in worse places. This didn't scare her. It just made her angrier. The next day, she called Moss and told her about the call. Moss tried to trace the number. It was a burner. Untraceable. "He's trying to spook you," Moss said. "I know." "Is it working?" "No." "Good. Because the hearing's tomorrow. And if you walk in there looking rattled, they'll use it against you." "I won't." "I know you won't. But I'm saying it anyway." Claire hung up and went back to work. She moved through her shift on autopilot, patching up patients and answering questions and pretending everything was fine. But inside, she was coiled tight, ready. The hearing was held in a conference room in the county courthouse, a building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. Claire arrived early, dressed in a clean shirt and slacks, her hair pulled back. She looked professional, composed, like she had her life together. Fraser met her outside the room. "You ready?" "As I'll ever be." "Good. Remember, stick to the facts. Don't let them rattle you. And if Locke's attorney tries to twist your words, call it out." "Got it." They walked inside. The room was small, with a long table in the center and chairs along the walls. The panel was already seated, 3 men in uniform, 1 woman in business attire, and a man in a suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Locke was there, sitting next to his attorney. He looked calm, confident, like he'd done this before. Claire sat down across from him. Their eyes met. He didn't look away. Neither did she. The panel chair, a man named Colonel Brennan, cleared his throat. "This is a formal hearing regarding the conduct of Officer Raymond Locke on the night of April 19th. We're here to determine whether Officer Locke violated department policy and whether disciplinary action is warranted. Miss Whitaker, you're here to provide testimony. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Good. Let's begin." Fraser stood and walked Claire through the night. The call. The drive. The arrest. The cell. The near death. Claire answered every question clearly, without hesitation. She didn't embellish. She didn't exaggerate. She just told the truth. When Fraser finished, Locke's attorney stood. His name was Dennis Keller, and he had the kind of face that made you want to punch it. "Miss Whitaker, you claim you were responding to an emergency. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And yet you were speeding. 82 and a 65. You admit that?" "Yes." "So you were breaking the law." "I was trying to save a life." "But you were still breaking the law." "Yes." Keller smiled. "And when Officer Locke pulled you over, you argued with him." "I explained the situation." "You argued." I tried to make him understand. By raising your voice? I didn't raise my voice. Are you sure? Because Officer Locke's report says you were belligerent. Claire looked at Locke. His report is wrong. Keller leaned on the table. Or maybe you're wrong. Maybe you were so focused on where you needed to be that you couldn't accept being held accountable for your actions. I wasn't being held accountable. I was being delayed. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you broke the law, got caught, and now you're trying to blame the officer for doing his job. Claire felt her jaw tighten. His job was to verify my credentials and let me go. Instead, he arrested me and left a patient to die. She didn't die, because I got there in time. Barely. Keller smiled again. Barely. So she wasn't in immediate danger. She was coding. That's immediate danger. But she survived, which means Officer Locke's actions didn't cause harm. They almost did. Almost isn't the same as actual. Claire leaned forward. If your wife was on that table, would you be okay with almost? Keller's smile vanished. That's irrelevant. No, it's not. Because the woman on that table was someone's wife, and she almost died because your client decided his ego was more important than her life. Brennan held up a hand. Ms. Whitaker, please. I'm just answering the question. Keller stepped back. No further questions. Fraser stood again. I'd like to enter into evidence the previous complaints filed against Officer Locke. 5 cases in 10 years, all involving women, all settled out of court. Keller shot to his feet. Objection. Those cases are sealed under non-disclosure agreements. They're part of a pattern of behavior, Fraser said. The panel has a right to know. Brennan looked at the legal advisor. The advisor leaned over and whispered something. Brennan nodded. We'll allow it, but only as context. Fraser handed out copies of the case summaries. Claire watched the panel read them. Their expressions didn't change, but she could see the shift, the realization. Brennan looked at Locke. Officer Locke, do you have anything to say? Locke stood. Those cases were settled. That means they're not admissions of guilt. That means they're not relevant. They're relevant if they establish a pattern. There's no pattern, just a series of misunderstandings. 5 misunderstandings. Locke's jaw tightened. Yes. Brennan looked at the panel. They exchanged glances, then he looked back at Locke. We'll take this under advisement. The hearing is adjourned. We'll reconvene with a decision in 48 hours. He slammed the gavel. Everyone stood. Claire walked out of the room, her legs shaking. Fraser followed. You did good. Did I? You told the truth. That's all you can do. Claire leaned against the wall. What happens now? Now we wait. But they didn't have to wait long. The next morning, Claire's phone rang. It was Moss. Turn on the news. Claire grabbed the remote and flipped to the local station. A reporter was standing outside the courthouse. Breaking news this morning as new evidence has surfaced in the case against Officer Raymond Locke. Sources close to the investigation say that surveillance footage from a gas station near the arrest site shows Officer Locke and another individual meeting shortly before the incident. The identity of the second individual has not been confirmed, but sources say it may be linked to an ongoing corruption probe. Claire's heart stopped. What probe? Moss's voice was tight. I don't know, but it just got bigger. The screen cut to a photo, grainy, pulled from a security camera. It showed Locke standing next to a man in a dark jacket. They were talking. The man handed Locke something, an envelope. The reporter continued. Federal investigators have confirmed they are looking into potential ties between Officer Locke and a suspected criminal network operating in Creston County. More details are expected to be released in the coming days. Claire sat down. This is insane. This is bigger than you, Moss said. This isn't just about one bad cop. This is about a system. What system? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Claire hung up and stared at the screen. The photo stayed up. Locke and the man, the envelope. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You just made a very powerful enemy. Claire deleted it and stood up. She didn't care about enemies. She cared about the truth. And the truth was just getting started. That afternoon, Fraser called. We need to meet, now. They met at a coffee shop on the edge of town. Fraser looked wired, like she hadn't slept. What's going on? Claire asked. The feds are taking over. This isn't just a disciplinary case anymore. It's a criminal investigation. Into Locke? Into everyone connected to him. They're looking at bribery, extortion, racketeering. They're looking at the whole department. Claire felt the room spin. How deep does this go? I don't know, but deep enough that they're bringing in agents from outside the state. What does that mean for me? It means you're a witness, a key witness. And that means you're at risk. At risk of what? Retaliation, intimidation. Worse, Claire set her coffee down. I'm not running. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to be smart. Let us handle this. You've been handling it, and look where we are. Fraser leaned back. You're angry. I get it. But anger doesn't win cases. Evidence does, and we're building that evidence. So let us do our job. Claire stood. Fine. But if something happens, it won't. You don't know that. No, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you're safe. Claire walked out. She didn't feel safe. She felt exposed, like she'd kicked over a rock and found a nest of snakes underneath. She went home, locked the door, and sat in the dark. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. Last chance. Walk away. Claire stared at it for a long moment. Then she typed back. No. She hit send and turned off her phone. The next morning there was a knock at her door. Claire looked through the peephole. 2 men in suits, badges clipped to their belts. She opened the door. Claire Whitaker? Yes. I'm Agent David Caldwell, FBI. This is Agent Nina Torres. We need to talk. Claire stepped aside and let them in. Caldwell was tall, mid-40s, with the kind of face that gave nothing away. Torres was younger, sharp-eyed, alert. They both looked like they'd been awake for days. What's this about? Claire asked. Caldwell pulled out a folder. We're investigating a criminal enterprise operating out of Creston County. Officer Locke is part of it, but he's not the only one. Who else? That's what we're trying to figure out. But we know it involves multiple officers, at least 2 county officials, and possibly someone in the judiciary. Claire sat down. You're saying the whole system is corrupt. Parts of it. Enough that it's been operating for years without anyone noticing. What do they do? Torres spoke for the first time. Everything. Extortion, witness intimidation, evidence tampering. They've been protecting each other and punishing anyone who threatens to expose them. And you think Locke is part of this? We know he is, Caldwell said. We've been watching him for 6 months. We just didn't have enough to move until now. What changed? You did. Claire looked at him. What? Your case broke it open. The media attention forced them to act, and when they acted, they made mistakes. The surveillance footage, the threats, the lawsuit, all of it gave us what we needed. Claire felt her stomach drop. So I'm bait. No, you're a catalyst. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Torres leaned forward. Look, I get it. You didn't sign up for this, but you're in it now, and the best thing you can do is help us finish it. How? Testify. Not just at the hearing. In federal court. Against all of them. Claire rubbed her face. What happens if I say no? They walk, and they keep doing what they've been doing. And if I say yes? You help us put them away for a long time. Claire stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the street. Everything looked normal. Cars, people, a dog on a leash. But underneath it all, there was rot. And she'd stumbled into it by accident. What about protection? She asked. We'll provide it, Caldwell said. 24-hour surveillance, safe house if necessary. Whatever you need. For how long? Until the trial ends. And after? After you go back to your life. Claire turned to face them. You really believe that? That I can just go back to normal after all this? Caldwell didn't answer. He didn't have to. All right, Claire said. I'll do it. Torres stood. Good. We'll need you to come with us now. We're moving you to a secure location until... No. Ms. Whitaker, I'm not leaving. I have a job. I have patients. I'm not going to hide. This isn't about hiding. It's about keeping you alive. Then keep me alive here. Caldwell and Torres exchanged a look. Fine, Caldwell said, but we're assigning you a protection detail, and you don't go anywhere without clearing it with us first. Deal. They left. Claire locked the door behind them and leaned against it. Her hands were shaking now, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the realization that she'd just agreed to something that could get her killed. Her phone rang. She answered. "Claire, it's Moss. Are you okay?" Define okay. The FBI was just here. They're asking questions. A lot of questions. About who? Everyone. The whole department. They're pulling records, interviewing officers, looking at old cases. It's a mess. Good. Good? Claire, people are panicking. Some of them are talking about leaving town. Others are lawyering up. Let them. You don't understand. This is bigger than Locke, way bigger. And when it all comes out, maybe things will finally change. Moss was quiet for a moment. You're not scared, are you? I'm terrified, but I'm not backing down. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. Moss laughed. It sounded strained. Be careful, okay? I will. Claire hung up and sat down. She pulled out her laptop and started going through emails. Most were routine. A few were supportive messages from people who'd read the article. One stood out. It was from an address she didn't recognize. The subject line said, "You should see this." She opened it. There was no text, just an attachment, a video file. She hesitated, then she clicked it. The video loaded. It was security footage, black and white, timestamp in the corner. It showed the interior of what looked like a police station. She recognized it. The same station where she'd been held. The footage showed Locke talking to someone off camera. Another officer, maybe. Then a third person entered the frame. The man from the gas station photo. The one who'd handed Locke the envelope. They talked for a few minutes. Then Locke pulled out a file and showed it to the man. The man nodded, pointed at something on the page. Locke made a note. Then the man handed him something else. Claire couldn't see what it was. The video ended. Claire sat back. She had no idea who sent this or why, but it was evidence, real evidence. She forwarded the email to Caldwell and Torres. Then she closed her laptop and tried to breathe. Her phone buzzed. A new text. "You're getting close. Be ready." Claire stared at the message. Then she deleted it. The hearing reconvened 2 days later. The room was more crowded this time. Reporters, observers, federal agents in the back row. Brennan called the room to order. "We've reviewed the testimony and the evidence. We've also been made aware of an ongoing federal investigation that pertains to this case. As such, we're suspending this hearing pending the outcome of that investigation." Keller stood. "Your Honor, that's unacceptable. My client has a right to— Your client is under federal investigation for corruption and obstruction of justice. This hearing is suspended. End of discussion." Brennan stood and walked out. The room erupted. Claire sat there watching Locke. His face was red. His hands were clenched. He looked like he wanted to flip the table. Keller grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door. As they passed Claire, Locke stopped. He leaned down, close enough that only she could hear. "This isn't over." Claire looked him in the eye. "Yes, it is." He walked out. Claire stood and found Fraser waiting by the door. "What happens now?" Claire asked. "Now the feds take over, and you stay safe." "That's it?" "That's it." Claire walked out of the courthouse and into the parking lot. Caldwell was waiting by a black SUV. "We need to move you. Now." "Why? What happened?" "Locke made bail, and we just got word that someone's been asking around about where you live." Claire's blood went cold. "Who?" "We don't know yet, but we're not taking chances." He opened the door. Claire got in. As they pulled out of the lot, she looked back at the courthouse. She could see Locke standing on the steps, talking to Keller. He was looking at his phone. Then he looked up. Their eyes met across the distance. He smiled. Claire turned away from the window as the SUV accelerated out of the parking lot. Caldwell was on the phone, his voice clipped and professional, coordinating with someone on the other end. Torres sat in the front passenger seat, her hand resting near her holster, eyes scanning every car they passed. "Where are we going?" Claire asked. "Safe house," Caldwell said without looking back. 30 miles outside the city. Secure location. No one knows about it except us." "For how long?" "Until we can guarantee your safety." Claire leaned back against the seat. Her pulse was still racing. The look on Locke's face, that smile. It wasn't the expression of a man who'd lost. It was the expression of someone who thought he still had control. They drove in silence for 20 minutes, leaving the town behind and heading into farmland. The landscape was flat and endless, broken only by occasional farmhouses and rusted silos. The SUV turned onto a gravel road, then another, until they pulled up to a small ranch-style house surrounded by trees. "This is it?" Claire asked. "This is it," Torres said. "2 exits, reinforced doors, security system tied directly to our command center. You'll be safe here." They got out. Caldwell unlocked the door and stepped inside first, checking the rooms. Torres stayed outside, scanning the perimeter. Claire stood in the driveway, looking back at the road. It felt like the middle of nowhere, which was probably the point. "Clear!" Caldwell called from inside. Claire walked in. The house was sparse: a couch, a table, a kitchenette, 2 bedrooms in the back. It looked like a place designed for short-term stays, functional, impersonal, forgettable. "Make yourself comfortable," Torres said. "We'll have an agent posted outside 24/7. You need anything, you tell them. Don't leave without clearance. Don't make calls from your personal phone. We'll give you a secure line." "What about my job?" "We've already notified the hospital. You're on medical leave." "I didn't agree to that." "You didn't have to. It's for your protection." Claire felt her jaw tighten. "So I'm just supposed to sit here and do nothing?" "You're supposed to stay alive," Caldwell said. "That's the priority." "And what about Locke? What's he doing while I'm hiding?" "He's being monitored. We've got eyes on him. If he moves, we'll know." "That's not good enough." "It's what we've got." Torres handed her a phone. "This is yours. Only use it to contact us. Don't call anyone else. Don't check social media. Don't do anything that could give away your location." Claire took the phone. It felt heavy in her hand, like a leash. "How long?" she asked again. "As long as it takes," Caldwell said. They left. Claire locked the door behind them and stood in the middle of the living room, listening to the silence. She'd been in worse places. Tents, bunkers, forward operating bases where mortar rounds landed every other night. But those places had purpose. This was just waiting. She walked to the window and looked out. An agent was sitting in an unmarked car at the end of the driveway. She could see the outline of his head, the glow of a phone screen. He looked bored. Claire turned away and sat down on the couch. She pulled out the secure phone and stared at it. Then she set it aside and closed her eyes. She woke to the sound of her phone buzzing. Not the secure phone, her personal phone, which she'd tucked into her jacket pocket despite Torres's warning. She pulled it out. A text from Moss. "You need to see this. Now." Claire opened the attached link. It was a news article. National outlet this time. The headline read, "Federal Investigation Uncovers Systemic Corruption in Missouri County Sheriff's Office." She read the article. It detailed the investigation into Locke and the network connected to him. It named names, officers, county officials, even a judge. It outlined the charges: bribery, extortion, witness tampering, evidence manipulation. It mentioned Claire by name as the whistleblower whose case had broken the investigation open. At the bottom of the article was a statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office. "This investigation is ongoing, and we expect additional arrests in the coming weeks." Claire set the phone down. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger, because the article made it sound like she'd chosen this, like she'd planned to become the face of a federal corruption case. She hadn't. She just tried to do her job. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Moss. "They're arresting people. Now. It's chaos." Claire stood and walked to the window. The agent was still in his car. Nothing had changed, but she could feel it, the shift, the dominoes starting to fall. She called Moss. The line rang twice before Moss picked up. "Claire, where are you?" "Somewhere safe. What's happening?" "Federal agents showed up at the station an hour ago. They arrested 3 officers. One of them was Captain Daniels." "Daniels? He's been there for 20 years. "Yeah, and apparently he's been dirty for most of them. They're saying he was the one who helped Locke cover up the previous cases. Falsified reports, buried complaints, all of it." Claire sat down. "What about Locke?" "He's gone." "Gone where?" "No one knows. He posted bail yesterday and disappeared. The feds are looking for him, but he's off the grid." Claire felt her stomach drop. "So he's running, or planning something. What does that mean?" Moss hesitated. "Claire, there's something else. One of the officers they arrested, he started talking. He said Locke has connections outside the department, people who owe him, people who don't want this investigation to go forward. What kind of people? The kind who don't care about laws. Claire stood and paced the room. The Fed said they had eyes on him. Maybe they did. But if he's smart, he's already gone. Where would he go? I don't know. But if I were you, I'd stay wherever you are. Claire hung up and called Caldwell. He answered on the first ring. What's wrong? Locke's gone. Moss says he disappeared after posting bail. We're aware. We're tracking his known associates and monitoring his financials. If he surfaces, we'll find him. And if he doesn't, then he's a fugitive, and we'll find him anyway. That's not reassuring. It's the truth. Claire hung up. She stood in the middle of the room, staring at the walls, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on her. She thought this would be over by now. She thought the hearing would lead to charges, the charges would lead to a trial, and the trial would lead to justice. But instead, it had exploded into something bigger, something messier, and Locke was still out there. 3 days passed. Claire stayed in the safe house, watched over by rotating agents who barely spoke to her. She read. She slept. She tried not to think about what was happening outside, but every time she turned on the news, there was another update, another arrest, another leak. The investigation was front-page news now, and her name was everywhere. Nurse who exposed corruption. Whistleblower in federal case. The woman who took down a sheriff's office. She hated all of it. She wasn't a hero. She was just someone who'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time and refused to stay quiet. On the 4th day, Caldwell showed up unannounced. He walked in without knocking, followed by Torres. Both of them looked grim. What happened? Claire asked. We found Locke. Where? About 60 miles from here. Holed up in a motel under a fake name. We moved in this morning. And? He didn't come quietly. Claire felt her chest tighten. Is he alive? Barely. He tried to run, pulled a weapon. One of our agents fired. He's in custody now, in critical condition at a hospital in Jefferson City. Claire sat down. So it's over. Not yet. Locke's lawyer is already claiming self-defense, and there's still the trial. What trial? The big one. Federal racketeering charges. We've got 17 defendants so far, including Locke. It's going to be a long process. And you need me to testify? Yes. Claire looked at him. When? Preliminary hearings start in 3 weeks. We'll need you there for at least 2 of them. Maybe more, depending on how it plays out. And after that? After that, you're free to go. Back to your life, back to work. Claire didn't say anything. She wasn't sure she believed him. Torres spoke up. There's something else. We found evidence on Locke's phone, text messages, emails. He's been in contact with someone inside the courthouse. We don't know who yet, but it's someone with access to sealed documents. What kind of documents? Your testimony, your address, details about the investigation. Claire felt the room tilt. Someone's been leaking. Yes. And we're working to find out who. In the meantime, we're moving you again. Different location, higher security. No. Caldwell frowned. This isn't a request. I don't care. I'm not running anymore. If someone wants to come after me, let them. I'm tired of hiding. Claire, I'm done. You want my testimony? Fine. But I'm not spending the next 3 weeks locked in a room somewhere, waiting for someone to decide my life is safe enough to live. Torres and Caldwell exchanged a look. All right, Caldwell said, but we're increasing your security. 2 agents, 24/7, and you don't leave the area without clearance. Fine. They left. Claire stood by the window watching the unmarked car pull away. She felt lighter, not safer, just lighter. The news kept coming. Every day another piece of the puzzle fell into place. More arrests, more evidence. The network was bigger than anyone had realized. It stretched beyond Creston County into neighboring jurisdictions, into state contracts, into political campaigns. Money had changed hands. Favors had been traded. People had looked the other way for years because it was easier than fighting. Claire watched it all unfold from the safe house. She read the articles. She watched the press conferences. She listened to prosecutors talk about justice and accountability and the rule of law. But she couldn't shake the feeling that it was all window dressing, that the real rot was still there, just deeper underground. On the sixth day, Martin Reed called her secure phone. She didn't know how he'd gotten the number, but she answered anyway. "Ms. Whitaker, I need to talk to you." "How did you get this number?" "I'm a reporter. It's my job. Listen, there's something you need to know. I've been digging into the financials. The money trail doesn't end with Locke or Daniels or even the judge." "Where does it end?" "That's the problem. I don't know yet. But there are shell companies, offshore accounts, payments going back 15 years. This thing is massive." Claire sat down. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're the one who started it, and I think you deserve to know what you've uncovered." "I didn't uncover anything. I just tried to save a patient." "Maybe, but you kicked over a hornet's nest, and now everyone's scrambling." "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. Just be careful, because whoever's at the top of this, they're not going to go down without a fight." He hung up. Claire sat there, staring at the phone. She didn't want to be part of this anymore. She just wanted to go back to work. Back to her life. Back to being invisible. But that wasn't an option anymore. The preliminary hearings were held in a federal courthouse in Kansas City. Claire was escorted there by 2 agents, both silent, both armed. The courthouse was massive, all marble and stone, with security checkpoints at every entrance. It felt like a fortress. She was led to a waiting room on the 3rd floor. Fraser was already there, along with 2 assistant U.S. attorneys. They stood when she entered. "Miss Whitaker, thank you for coming." Like I had a choice. One of the attorneys, a woman named Paula Vincent, smiled faintly. "You do, but we appreciate you being here. This is a critical case. Your testimony is the foundation." "No pressure, then. Just tell the truth. That's all we need." They prepped her for an hour, walking through the timeline again, clarifying details, making sure she understood the questions she'd be asked. Then they led her to the courtroom. It was packed. Reporters, observers, federal agents. The defendants sat in a row along one side, flanked by their attorneys. Locke wasn't there. He was still in the hospital, under guard. But the others were. Daniels, Kessler, 3 county commissioners, 2 state contractors, a city council member. All of them in suits, all of them looking like respectable citizens instead of criminals. Claire was sworn in and took the stand. The lead prosecutor, a man named Richard Holt, approached. "Ms. Whitaker, can you state your name and occupation for the record?" "Claire Elizabeth Whitaker, registered nurse, trauma specialist at Mercy Ridge Regional Hospital." "And can you describe the events of April 19th? Claire took a breath and started. She told the story again, the call, the drive, the arrest, the cell, the near death. She didn't rush. She didn't embellish. She just told the truth. When she finished, Holt nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. No further questions." One of the defense attorneys stood. His name was Gordon Lyle, and he looked like he'd stepped out of a Brooks Brothers catalog. "Ms. Whitaker, you've painted a very sympathetic picture of yourself. But let's talk about the facts. You were speeding, correct?" "Yes." "And when Officer Locke pulled you over, you argued with him." "I explained the situation." "You argued. I tried to make him understand that someone was dying. But you didn't comply with his lawful order to step out of the vehicle immediately, did you?" "I complied. It just took a moment." "A moment. How long is a moment?" "A few seconds." 5 seconds? 10? "I don't know. I didn't time it." Lyle smiled. "So you don't know, but you're asking this court to believe that Officer Locke acted improperly when, by your own admission, you delayed complying with his orders." "I didn't delay. I was trying to explain. You were arguing. You've said that yourself." Claire felt her temper flare. "I was trying to save a life. He was trying to assert his authority. There's a difference." "Is there? Or is it possible that you were so focused on where you needed to be that you couldn't accept being held accountable?" "I've been held accountable my entire career, but I've never been arrested for doing my job." Lyle stepped closer. "Your job is to save lives. Officer Locke's job is to enforce the law. He was doing his job. You were breaking the law, and now you're here trying to destroy his career because you didn't like being stopped." Claire leaned forward. "I'm here because he arrested me while someone was dying, and because I found out he's been doing the same thing to women for years. That's not about me not liking being stopped. That's about him abusing his power." Lyle's smile faded. "No further questions." Claire stepped down. Her legs felt weak, but she kept her head up. She walked out of the courtroom and into the hallway where Caldwell was waiting. "You did good." "Did I?" "You held your ground. That's what matters." Claire leaned against the wall. "How long is this going to take?" "The preliminary hearings?" "Another week." "The actual trial?" "Months." "Months." "At least." Claire closed her eyes. She felt exhausted. Not physically, just drained. "Can I go home?" she asked. "Not yet. We're still tracking down the leak. Until we know who it is, you're safer here." "Here meaning where?" "A hotel, secure. We'll have agents with you around the clock." Claire nodded. She didn't have the energy to argue. They put her in a hotel downtown, a mid-range place with decent security and a view of nothing. She spent the next 3 days in the room, reading depositions, reviewing evidence, preparing for the next hearing. She barely slept. When she did, she dreamed about the arrest, about Locke, about the woman on the table. On the 4th day, Caldwell knocked on her door. "We found the leak." Claire opened the door. "Who?" "Judge Martin Kessler. He was feeding information to Locke in exchange for cash and protection. We arrested him this morning." Claire felt the air leave her lungs. "A judge. A judge. Which means every case he touched is now under review. It's going to take years to sort out the damage. How deep does this go?" "We're still figuring that out, but deep enough that we're looking at federal charges for everyone involved." Claire sat down on the bed. "When does it end?" "When they're all in prison." "And when is that?" "Soon, I promise." But soon turned into weeks. The hearings dragged on. More defendants were added. More evidence was uncovered. The case grew and grew until it felt like it would never end. Claire testified 3 more times. Each time she told the same story. Each time the defense tried to break her. Each time she held firm. Between hearings, she went back to the safe house. She read. She walked the property with agents trailing her. She talked to Jenna on the secure phone, hearing about the ER, about patients, about the mundane normalcy she'd left behind. "When are you coming back?" Jenna asked one night. "I don't know." "We need you." "I know." "The new temp we got, she's fine, but she's not you." Claire smiled despite herself. "Tell her I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, just come back." "I will." She meant it, but she didn't know when. 2 weeks later, Torres showed up at the safe house with news. "We've made progress on the network. Locke wasn't the top. He was middle management." Claire looked up from her book. "What does that mean?" "It means there's someone above him, someone who's been running the operation for years. We've been following the money, and it leads to a man named Victor Brennan." "Brennan? Like the colonel from the hearing?" "His brother. Victor Brennan runs a construction company that's been awarded every major county contract for the past decade. Turns out those contracts were bought. Bribes, kickbacks, and Locke was the enforcement arm." Claire set the book down. "So Locke was the muscle." "Exactly. And now that he's locked up, Brennan's scrambling. He's trying to clean house, destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses. Am I on that list?" "You're at the top of it." Claire felt her stomach turn. "Great. But we're close. We're building a case against Brennan, and when we move, it's going to bring down the entire network." "How close?" "Days, maybe a week." "And what do I do until then?" "Stay here. Stay safe." Torres left. Claire sat on the couch, staring at the wall. She felt trapped, not by the safe house, by the waiting, by the sense that no matter how far she ran, the threat was always one step behind. That night she couldn't sleep. She got up, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table. Her secure phone buzzed, a text from Caldwell. "New development. Call me." She dialed. "What happened?" "Brennan made a move. He tried to bribe one of our witnesses. We caught it on tape. It's exactly what we needed." "So you can arrest him?" "Tomorrow morning. We're coordinating with local and state agencies. It's going to be a sweep. Brennan, his associates, everyone." Claire felt something loosen in her chest. "So it's really over." "Almost. We still need you for the trial, but after tomorrow, the immediate threat is gone." "And Locke?" "He's pleading out. In exchange for testimony against Brennan, he'll get a reduced sentence, 20 years instead of life." Claire closed her eyes. That's not justice. It's the system, but it's better than nothing. She hung up and sat in the dark. 20 years. Locke would be an old man when he got out. If he got out, it wasn't enough. But it was something. The next morning, she woke to her phone ringing. Caldwell. It's done. Brennan's in custody. So are 14 others. The network's dismantled. Claire let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. What now? Now we prep for trial. But you're clear to go home. We'll still have agents nearby, but the immediate danger is gone. When can I leave? Today. Pack your things. We'll drive you back this afternoon. She packed in 10 minutes. She hadn't brought much. Just clothes and a few books. The agent who'd been posted outside drove her back to Creston. The drive felt longer than it should have. She stared out the window, watching the landscape shift from farmland to small towns to the familiar roads near her apartment. When they pulled up to her building, she felt a strange mix of relief and disorientation, like she'd been gone for years instead of weeks. You need anything? You call, the agent said. Thanks. She got out and walked up to her apartment. The door was the same. The hallway smelled the same. Everything was the same, except her. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Couch, table, kitchen, but it felt different, smaller somehow. She set her bag down and walked to the window. The parking lot, the street. Normal life, happening without her. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jenna. Heard you're back. Shift tomorrow? Claire smiled. Yeah, I'll be there. She set the phone down and sat on the couch. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. But the feeling didn't last. That night, she woke to the sound of glass breaking. She sat up, heart pounding, and grabbed her phone. The screen lit up the dark room. No signal. She got out of bed and moved to the door, listening. Footsteps. In her living room. Claire's mind raced. The agents were outside. They should have seen this, unless they were already down. She grabbed the lamp from her nightstand, unplugged it, and held it like a weapon. Then she opened the bedroom door slowly, silently. A figure stood in her living room, backlit by the streetlight through the window, male, tall, holding something. Claire Whitaker, the voice said. Calm, almost friendly. We need to talk. Who are you? Someone who wants to make a deal. I'm not interested. You should be. Because your testimony puts a lot of people in prison, people who have friends, people who have money. And those friends, they're willing to pay a lot to make sure you don't testify. Claire tightened her grip on the lamp. Get out. Or what? You'll hit me with a lamp? Come on, we're both adults here. I said get out. The figure took a step forward. You think this is over. It's not. Brennan's in custody, sure, but there are others, and they're not going to let you destroy what they've built. Then they can come after me. I'm not backing down. I was hoping you'd say that. The figure raised the object in his hand. Claire saw the glint of metal. A gun. She threw the lamp. It hit him in the shoulder. He stumbled. She ran for the door, yanked it open, and screamed. The agents were there. One tackled the intruder. The other pulled Claire out into the hallway. Are you hurt? No, I'm fine. They cuffed the intruder and dragged him out. Claire stood in the hallway, shaking, watching them load him into a car. Caldwell showed up 20 minutes later. Who was he? Claire asked. One of Brennan's guys. He slipped through. We're tightening security. You said it was over. It is. This was a last-ditch attempt. He's in custody now. It's done. Claire looked at him. Is it? Caldwell didn't answer. The trial began 2 months later. Claire testified for 5 days. She walked through everything, the arrest, the threats, the corruption, the network. She answered every question. She faced every defendant. She didn't flinch. The defense tried everything. They questioned her memory. They questioned her motives. They suggested she was exaggerating. They painted her as someone seeking attention. But the evidence spoke for itself. The surveillance footage, the text messages, the financial records, the testimony from other witnesses who'd been silenced for years. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Guilty. Across the board. Locke got 20 years. Daniels got 18. Kessler got 15. Brennan got 35. The county commissioners got 10 each. The contractors got 8. The others got varying sentences. None of them walked free. Claire wasn't in the courtroom when the verdicts were read. She was at work. A trauma had just come in. A construction accident, severe bleeding, critical condition. She scrubbed in, took over, and saved the man's life. When her shift ended, she walked out to the parking lot. Moss was waiting. "I heard." "Yeah. You did it." "We did it." Moss smiled. "You want to get that drink now?" "Yeah, I think I do." They went to a bar on the edge of town. It was quiet. They ordered beer and didn't talk about the case. They talked about work, about life, about nothing and everything. When Claire got home that night, she found an envelope on her doorstep. Plain, white, no return address. She opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper, handwritten. "Congratulations, you won. But remember, there's always someone else. And they're watching. Sleep well, Claire." She read it twice. Then she pulled out her phone and called Caldwell. "There's another note. We'll send someone." "No, I'm done running. Whoever sent this, let them come." "Claire, I mean it. I'm not hiding anymore. If they want me, they know where I am." She hung up and walked inside. She locked the door and set the note on the table. Then she sat down and waited. Because she knew the truth now. This wasn't over. It would never be over. There would always be another Locke, another Brennan, another system built on silence and fear. But she also knew something else. She wasn't afraid anymore. And the next time they came for her, she'd be ready. But they didn't come that night, or the next, or the week after. Claire went back to work. She pulled double shifts when the hospital needed her. She trained new nurses. She saved lives. She moved through her days with a quiet focus that felt different from before. Sharper, more deliberate. Like she'd been asleep for years and had only just woken up. The note sat on her kitchen table for 3 days before she threw it away. Not because she wasn't taking it seriously, but because she refused to let it control her. 2 weeks after the verdicts, General Hale called. "Ms. Whitaker, I wanted to thank you personally. My wife is home now, recovering well. The doctors say she wouldn't have made it without you. I was just doing my job. You were doing more than that. You were fighting for her when no one else would. That's not just a job, that's courage." Claire didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. "There's something else," Hale continued. "I've been talking to some people, congressional oversight committees, Department of Justice officials. There's momentum building for national reform, emergency responder protection laws, accountability measures for law enforcement. Your case is the catalyst." "I didn't do it to be a catalyst." "I know, but that's what you've become. And I wanted you to know that it's making a difference." "Good. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you have my number." "Thank you, General." He hung up. Claire stood in her kitchen, staring at the phone. She didn't feel like a catalyst. She felt tired. But something was shifting. She could feel it in the way people looked at her now. Not with pity, not with suspicion, with something else. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. Like they finally saw her for who she was instead of who they'd assumed she was. It was uncomfortable. She wasn't used to being seen. 3 weeks after the trial ended, Caldwell showed up at the hospital. Claire was in the break room, eating a sandwich that tasted like cardboard, when he walked in. "Got a minute?" "Depends. Are you here to tell me someone else is after me?" "No, I'm here to tell you it's actually over this time." Claire set the sandwich down. "What happened?" "We traced the note. Fingerprints on the envelope matched a man named Kyle Garrett, low-level enforcer. Works for a firm that did security for some of Brennan's projects. We picked him up yesterday." "And?" "He talked. Said he was hired to scare you, not hurt you, just make you think twice about any future testimony." "Who hired him?" "A lawyer. Guy named Philip Weston. He's been representing some of the defendants. We arrested him this morning. Obstruction of justice. Witness intimidation. He's facing federal charges." Claire leaned back in her chair. "So that's it?" "That's it. The network's gone. The threat's gone. You're clear." "For real this time?" "For real." Claire looked at him. "Why do I not believe you?" Caldwell smiled faintly. "Because you're smart. But I'm telling you the truth. We've been monitoring communications, financial transactions, known associates. There's no one left. Brennan's connections have dried up. Locke's allies have scattered. The system that protected them is dismantled." Systems like that don't just disappear. No, but they can be broken, and you broke this one. Claire didn't respond. She just sat there trying to process it. There's something else, Caldwell said. The Department of Justice is launching a task force, national scope, focused on corruption in law enforcement and emergency services. They want you to consult. Me? You, your experience, your perspective. They think you can help shape the reforms. I'm not a consultant. I'm a nurse. You're someone who understands what happens when the system fails. That makes you more valuable than any consultant. Claire shook her head. I need to think about it. Take your time. But the offer's there. He left. Claire finished her sandwich, or tried to. She ended up throwing most of it away. That night, she couldn't sleep again. Not because she was scared, but because her mind wouldn't stop turning. She kept thinking about the offer, about what it would mean to step into that world, to become part of the machine she'd just spent months fighting against. She didn't want to be a symbol. She didn't want to be a spokesperson. She just wanted to do her job. But maybe that wasn't an option anymore. The next morning, Jenna cornered her in the supply room. You look like hell. Thanks. Seriously, what's going on? Claire told her about the offer, about the task force, about the decision she couldn't make. Jenna listened without interrupting. When Claire finished, she crossed her arms. You know what I think? What? I think you're scared. Of what? Of being more than just a nurse, of letting people see that you're capable of changing things on a bigger scale. Claire frowned. I don't want to change things on a bigger scale. I just want to take care of patients. Bullshit. If that were true, you would have stayed quiet. You would have let Locke walk away. You would have taken the settlement and moved on. But you didn't, because deep down, you knew this was bigger than one patient, bigger than one night. Claire looked away. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, and you chose to fight, so don't pretend you're not capable of doing it again. This is different. How? Because this isn't about one case. This is about becoming part of a system, and I don't trust systems. Jenna smiled. Then change it from the inside. That's what they're asking you to do. Claire didn't have an answer for that. She thought about it for days. She went through her shifts. She saved lives. She taught a new resident how to place a central line. She comforted a family whose father didn't make it. She did all the things she'd always done. But something was different now. She kept seeing the cracks, the inefficiencies, the places where the system failed people, the times when paperwork mattered more than patience, the moments when protocol took precedence over common sense. She'd always seen these things, but now she couldn't unsee them. A week later, she called Caldwell. I'll do it, the consulting, but on my terms. What terms? I stay here. I keep my job. I don't become a full-time bureaucrat. I consult when needed, but I don't give up patient care. Done. And I want Moss involved. She's the one who spoke up when no one else would. She deserves to be part of this. I'll make it happen. And one more thing. What's that? I want access to these cases. All of them. The ones that got buried. The ones that never made it to trial. The people who were silenced. I want to know their stories. Caldwell was quiet for a moment. That's a lot of pain to dig through. I know, but if we're going to fix this, we need to understand how deep it goes. All right, I'll get you clearance. Claire hung up and sat in her car outside the hospital. She stared at the building, the place where she'd spent years trying to save people one at a time. It had always felt like enough, but now it didn't. Now she understood that saving one person wasn't enough when the system kept producing more victims. The work began slowly. Claire traveled to D.C. twice a month for meetings. She sat in rooms with legislators and policy experts and advocates. She told her story over and over until it stopped feeling like her story and started feeling like evidence. She learned how to speak the language of reform, how to translate lived experience into policy recommendations, how to push back against resistance without burning bridges. It was exhausting, but it was also necessary. Moss joined her for the second trip. They sat in a conference room with a dozen other people, police officers, civil rights attorneys, emergency responders, all of them with stories similar to Claire's, all of them trying to make sure it didn't happen to anyone else. This is surreal, Moss whispered during a break. Tell me about it. Do you think it'll actually change anything? I don't know, but I know what happens if we don't try. The reforms started small. New protocols for emergency responder protection, mandatory review processes for officer-involved detentions, whistleblower protections for anyone reporting misconduct. Then they got bigger. Federal oversight programs, independent review boards, funding for accountability initiatives. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't fast, but it was progress. Claire kept working at the hospital. She pulled fewer double shifts now, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. The consulting work took time, but she made sure she was still in the ER at least 3 days a week. Still scrubbing in, still saving lives, because that's who she was. Not a consultant, not a symbol, a nurse. 6 months after the trial, Claire got a call from Teresa Vaughn, the woman from the first lawsuit against Locke. The one that had been buried under an NDA. "I saw what you did," Teresa said. Her voice was quiet, tentative. "And I wanted to thank you." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do, because you did what I couldn't. You fought back, and you won." Claire sat down. "You fought back too. You filed a lawsuit." "And then I took the money and signed the papers and stayed quiet. I told myself it was the smart thing to do. But it wasn't. It was the easy thing. You did what you had to do to survive, maybe. But watching what you did, it made me realize I could have done more. And I want to now." "What do you mean?" "I want to help, with the task force, with the reforms. I want to make sure other women don't have to make the choice I made." Claire felt something tighten in her chest. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Teresa joined the effort. So did Angela Ruiz. So did 3 other women whose cases had been settled and buried. They testified before committees. They shared their stories with journalists. They became part of the narrative that was reshaping how the country thought about law enforcement and accountability. And slowly the culture began to shift. This wasn't just about one corrupt cop or one bad department anymore. It was about recognizing patterns, about acknowledging that individual cases were symptoms of systemic failures, about understanding that change required more than punishing a few bad actors. It required rebuilding trust from the ground up. The reforms kept coming. By the end of the year, 12 states had passed emergency responder protection laws. Federal oversight programs were expanded. Independent review boards were established in 30 jurisdictions. But the work that mattered most wasn't happening in conference rooms or legislative chambers. It was happening in communities. In training sessions where officers learned to de-escalate instead of dominate. In hospitals where protocols were rewritten to prioritize patient care over bureaucratic convenience. In classrooms where young people were taught that speaking up wasn't just a right, it was a responsibility. Claire spoke at one of those sessions, a community college in Kansas City. The room was packed with nursing students, EMTs, paramedics. She stood at the front looking at their faces, young, eager, uncertain, and tried to find the right words. "I didn't set out to change anything," she said. "I just wanted to do my job. But the system had other plans. And when I realized that doing my job meant fighting the system, I had to make a choice. Stay quiet and stay safe, or speak up and risk everything." She paused. The room was silent. "I'm not going to tell you what choice to make. That's yours. But I will tell you this. Silence doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for people to ignore you. And being ignored, that's not safety. That's erasure." A student in the front row raised her hand. "What if speaking up doesn't change anything?" Claire looked at her. "Then you speak up again. And again. Until it does." "But what if it costs you everything?" "Then you decide if everything is worth keeping if it means staying silent." The student nodded slowly. Claire could see the gears turning, the calculation, the fear. She remembered that feeling, the paralysis that came from knowing that any choice you made would cost you something. "Here's what I learned," Claire continued. "You can't control how people respond to your voice. You can only control whether you use it. And the moment you decide that your voice matters, that your experience, your truth, your perspective has value, that's the moment everything changes. Not for them. For you." After the session, several students came up to talk to her. They shared their own stories. Times they'd been dismissed. Times they'd stayed quiet. Times they'd regretted it. One young woman pulled Claire aside. "I reported a doctor for sexually harassing me during my clinical rotation. The school told me I was overreacting. They said if I pursued it, I'd be blacklisted, so I dropped it." Claire looked at her. "Do you regret that?" "Every day." Then do something about it. It's too late. It was 2 years ago. It's never too late. File a report with the state board. Talk to a lawyer. Tell your story. You don't have to carry that alone. The woman's eyes filled with tears. What if no one believes me? What if they do? The woman nodded and walked away. Claire didn't know if she'd actually do anything, but she hoped so, because that's how it worked. One person speaking up gave permission to the next, and the next, until the silence broke. 9 months after the trial, Claire was invited to testify before a Senate committee. The hearing was focused on nationwide reforms for emergency responder protection. She sat at a long table, facing rows of senators and cameras and reporters. The questions came fast. About her experience, about the investigation, about the reforms she thought were necessary. She answered honestly. She didn't sugarcoat. She didn't perform. She just told the truth. One senator, a woman from Vermont, leaned forward. Ms. Whitaker, you've been through hell. You were arrested for trying to save a life. You were threatened. You were intimidated. And yet, here you are. Why? Claire thought about it. Because staying quiet felt like dying slowly, and I'd rather fight and lose than disappear without a sound. The senator nodded. You've inspired a lot of people. Do you feel that responsibility? I feel the responsibility to keep doing the work. Whether that inspires people or not isn't up to me. But it does inspire people. Doesn't that matter? Claire looked at her. What matters is that we fix the system. Inspiration is nice, but it doesn't save lives. Policy does. Accountability does. Change does. The hearing ended. Claire walked out into the hallway where Moss was waiting. You crushed it. I just answered questions. You made half of them cry. That wasn't the goal. Maybe not, but it helps. They walked outside. The sun was bright. The air was cold. Claire felt exhausted, but also strangely energized. You know what's weird? Moss said. What? A year ago, we were just doing our jobs, and now we're here, testifying before Congress, rewriting policies, changing laws. Yeah. Does it feel real to you? Claire thought about it. No, but I don't think it's supposed to. They stood there for a moment watching the traffic. Then Moss's phone rang. She answered, listened, and hung up. That was Caldwell. They just arrested another judge, county court in Illinois. Same pattern as Kessler, falsifying records, burying complaints. Claire closed her eyes. How many more? I don't know, but at least now we know what to look for. They drove back to the hotel. Claire sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window. She thought about all the cases that were being reopened, all the people who'd been silenced, all the damage that had been done over years and years of unchecked power. It was overwhelming, but it was also necessary, because the only way to rebuild trust was to acknowledge how it had been broken in the first place. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She sat in her hotel room, staring at her laptop. She'd been compiling a list. Names of women who'd filed complaints against officers, cases that had been settled. ND. As that had been signed, there were hundreds, maybe thousands, all of them buried, all of them forgotten. She started writing emails, not to the women, she didn't have their contact information, but to the lawyers who'd represented them, to the advocacy groups who'd tried to help, to the journalists who'd covered the cases before they disappeared. She asked for their stories, for their data, for anything that could help build a complete picture of how deep the problem went. Some responded, others didn't, but slowly the picture came together. And it was worse than she'd thought. The next morning, she met with Caldwell and Torres at a coffee shop near the Capitol. I need you to look at this, she said, sliding her laptop across the table. Caldwell scrolled through the document. His expression darkened. Where did you get this? Everywhere. Public records, court filings, advocacy groups, journalists. I've been piecing it together for months. This is massive. I know. Torres leaned over to look. This isn't just Creston County. This is nationwide. I know. Caldwell looked at her. What do you want us to do with this? I want you to investigate all of it. Every case, every complaint, every settlement. I want you to find out how many women have been silenced, and I want you to give them their voices back. That's going to take years. Then you'd better get started. Caldwell closed the laptop and slid it back to her. You realize what you're asking for, right? This isn't just about holding a few cops accountable. This is about exposing an entire culture, a system that's been operating for decades. I know. And you're willing to be the face of that? Claire looked at him. I don't want to be the face of anything, but if that's what it takes, then yes. Torres spoke up. You're going to have enemies, powerful ones, people who've built their careers on keeping this buried. I already have enemies. What's a few more? Caldwell smiled faintly. All right, we'll look into it. But this is going to take resources, political will, and a lot of patience. Then find them. He nodded. We will. They left. Claire sat alone at the coffee shop, staring at her laptop. She felt drained, but also determined, because this was the work. Not the headlines, not the accolades, not the recognition. This, the digging, the documenting, the refusal to let things stay buried. Over the next 6 months, the investigation expanded. More cases were reopened, more officers were charged, more officials were implicated. The network that had seemed so impenetrable began to crumble piece by piece. And with each arrest, with each conviction, with each settlement overturned, something shifted. The culture began to change. Not quickly, not easily, but undeniably. Officers who'd once operated with impunity now faced scrutiny. Departments that had buried complaints now faced oversight. Systems that had protected the powerful now had to answer to the people they'd failed. It wasn't perfect. There were setbacks, appeals, delays, attempts to undermine the reforms. But the momentum was building, and it wasn't stopping. Claire continued working at the hospital. She pulled her shifts, she saved her patients, she trained her residents. But now, there was something else, a sense of purpose that extended beyond the ER. She wasn't just saving lives one at a time anymore. She was helping to build a system where fewer lives would need saving in the first place. 1 year after the trial, Claire stood in the parking lot of Mercy Ridge Regional Hospital. It was late. Her shift had just ended. The sky was dark, scattered with stars. Her phone buzzed, a text from Teresa. We won, NDA overturned, settlement nullified, story goes public next week. Claire stared at the message. Then she typed back. Congratulations, you deserve it. We all do. Thank you for showing us it was possible. Claire put the phone away and leaned against her car. She thought about everything that had happened, everything that had changed. A year ago, she'd been arrested for trying to save a life. She'd been cuffed, silenced, dismissed. She'd been told her voice didn't matter, that her credentials were irrelevant, that her job was less important than a cop's ego. And now? Now, laws had changed. Policies had been rewritten. Hundreds of cases had been reopened. Thousands of voices had been heard, not because of her, but because of everyone who'd refused to stay silent. She got in her car and drove home. The streets were empty. The town was quiet. Everything looked the same. But it wasn't. Because somewhere a nurse was responding to an emergency without fear of being arrested. Somewhere an officer was verifying credentials instead of dismissing them. Somewhere a woman was speaking up because she'd seen someone else do it first. And that, more than any verdict, more than any reform, more than any recognition, that was what mattered. Claire pulled into her parking spot. She got out, locked the car, and walked up to her apartment. Inside, everything was familiar. Couch, table, kitchen, the life she'd built, the life she'd fought to keep. She sat down and closed her eyes. She was tired. Not the exhaustion that came from a long shift, but the deeper kind. The kind that came from fighting battles you never asked for. But she didn't regret it, any of it, because she'd learned something in the fire, something she'd carry with her forever. That power wasn't something you were given, it was something you took. That justice wasn't something that happened to you, it was something you fought for. That being underestimated was a gift, because no one saw you coming until it was too late. She'd been underestimated her entire life, dismissed because she was quiet, overlooked because she didn't demand attention, ignored because she didn't fit the mold of what people thought strength looked like. But she'd learned that strength didn't have to be loud, it didn't have to be aggressive, it didn't have to perform. Sometimes the strongest thing you could do was refuse to disappear, refuse to be silenced, refuse to accept that this was just how things were. And that refusal, that quiet, stubborn, relentless refusal that could change the world. Claire opened her eyes and looked around her apartment. This was her life. Simple, small, ordinary. But it was hers, and no one could take it from her. Not a badge, not a threat, not a system designed to break her. She stood and walked to the window. She looked out at the street, at the town she'd called home for years. The place where she'd been arrested, threatened, almost destroyed. But also the place where she'd fought back, where she'd found her voice, where she'd discovered that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they refused to stay quiet. She thought about all the women who'd come before her, the ones who'd filed complaints and been silenced, the ones who'd settled and signed NDAs and carried their pain alone. She thought about all the women who'd come after her, the ones who'd speak up because they'd seen someone else do it first, the ones who'd fight because they'd learned it was possible to win. And she thought about herself, the nurse from nowhere who'd stood up to a corrupt system and won, not because she was special, but because she'd refused to be ordinary. Claire turned away from the window and went to bed. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. More work, more fights, more battles against systems that didn't want to change. But she was ready. Not because the fight was over, but because she finally understood that the fight was never over. That justice wasn't a destination. It was a constant daily act of resistance against the forces that tried to silence you. And as long as there were people willing to fight, the system could be beaten. She closed her eyes and fell asleep. And for the first time in over a year, she slept through the night. No nightmares, no flashbacks, no waking up in a cold sweat, remembering the cuffs and the cell and the lights in her rearview mirror. Just sleep. Deep and dreamless and complete. Because she'd done what she set out to do. Not perfectly, not easily, but thoroughly. She'd fought back. And she'd won. Not just for herself, but for everyone who came after. And that, more than any verdict, more than any reform, more than any accolade, that was enough. The next morning, Claire woke to sunlight streaming through her window. She got up, made coffee, and put on her scrubs. She drove to the hospital. She parked in the same spot she always did. She walked through the same doors. She greeted the same people. But everything felt different. Not heavier, not harder, just clearer. Like she'd been looking at the world through a foggy window and someone had finally wiped it clean. She scrubbed in for her first case. A car accident victim. Severe trauma. Bleeding. Critical. She worked fast. Her hands steady. Her focus absolute. She didn't think about the trial or the reforms or the task force or any of it. She just did her job. And when the patient stabilized, when the monitors showed a strong, steady heartbeat, when the family was told their loved one would survive, that's when she felt it. The reason she'd fought so hard, the reason she'd refused to back down. Because this, saving lives, giving people a second chance, being there when it mattered most, this was what she was meant to do. Not testify, not consult, not inspire, just this. And if fighting the system was what it took to keep doing this work, then she'd fight. Again and again and again. Because that's what nurses did. They showed up. They fought for their patients. They refused to let bureaucracy and ego and corruption stand between them and the people who needed them. And Claire Whitaker, the quiet nurse from nowhere who'd been arrested for doing her job, she wasn't going to stop now. She walked out of the trauma room. Jenna was waiting in the hallway. Good save. Thanks. You look different. Do I? Yeah, lighter, like you finally let something go. Claire smiled. Maybe I did. What? The idea that I had to be more than I am. Jenna nodded. You were always enough, Claire. You just didn't know it. I do now. They walked down the hallway together, back to the ER, back to the chaos, back to the work that never ended. And Claire, for the first time in her life, felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Not because the system had validated her, not because the world had recognized her, but because she'd validated herself. She'd looked at a broken system and decided she was worth more than what it offered. She'd looked at authority and decided her voice mattered more than their badge. She'd looked at fear and decided that courage wasn't about not being afraid. It was about refusing to let fear make your decisions for you. And that quiet, stubborn, unbreakable resolve, that was her legacy. Not the verdicts, not the reforms, not the headlines, but the proof that ordinary people could stand up to extraordinary corruption and win, that nurses could be warriors, that silence could be broken, that justice, however long it took, was always worth fighting for. Claire pulled on a fresh pair of gloves and walked back into the ER. Another patient was coming in, another emergency, another chance to save a life, and she was ready. Because this was who she was. Not a hero, not a symbol, just a nurse who'd learned that sometimes doing your job meant fighting for the right to do it. And she'd never stop fighting, not for recognition, not for praise, but for the simple, radical belief that people mattered more than power, that lives mattered more than laws, that truth mattered more than convenience, and that one person, just one, could change everything if they refused to stay silent.